This is Allie with the Perception Trainers, author of the Perception Diet, and today is a very, very exciting day because you are ready, if you don't already know all this stuff, to learn the truth about manifestation, the truth about vibration, the truth about energy, the truth about all these things, so that you can start to live a life in harmony with yourself, okay? So in this video, I am going to give you a whole bunch of foundational background information that you need to have in order to understand manifestation, conscious co-creation, what it really means to live a life of love, and all of that awesome stuff. So basically, yeah, in order to understand everything that I'm going to say in the next video, I'm going to give you all the background information in this video. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so our universe, you have probably heard this, that we live in a vibrational, unified universe. All right? So, what does that mean and how does that apply to you? Right? So, in the New Age and spirituality community, you've probably heard the words vibration and energy and frequency and love versus fear and light thrown around. And these tend to be kind of like woo-woo-y concepts that tend not to feel like they're very much grounded in anything. So today I'm going to give you the foundations so that you fully understand that these words and these terms and these concepts are not woo-woo at all. They're completely logical, they're completely scientific, and they're completely happening to you right here, right now, all the time, and how that matters for you in creating and living a life that feels good for you. All right? So, the first thing to understand is that everything in existence, so everything that we say has life, has motion. Okay? Everything in existence moves or vibrates. All right? So literally all the way down to the smallest particle or wave, however you want to look at us, all the way up to the biggest body in the solar system is vibrating. There is motion. All right? So in order for something to be categorized as life, basically the only characteristic that it has to have is that it's moving. All right? So that is what vibration is. So when we look at a chair versus a human being, right? We know that the particles and/or waves that make up the chair are moving slower than the particles or waves that make up the human being, right? We're made out of very similar stuff. As when we go down to it, we're all just particles or we're all just waves. Everything is just a particle or a wave, right? Everything is just a particle or a waveform. The thing that differentiates the reflection of the manifestation of said life is the speed at which the particles or waves are moving. Okay? So higher vibration or lower vibration. Does that make sense to you? Right? So everything in life moves. The thing that separates different versions of life is simply the speed at which that motion is taking place. All right? Third thing, where does this motion come from? So now, we know that the universe is mostly empty space, right? So we could literally compact all the particles that make up actual physical reality into a very small amount of space, right? And it's mostly empty space around it, all right? So, and then as above, so below, right? So out in the universe, mostly space. In your body, mostly empty space. In your table or your chairs or whatever, mostly empty space. All right, so now what we understand now about this empty space is that it is providing the force that is moving the particles or waves of life, okay? So it is from the void space, from the empty space, that the energy that moves everything in life comes. Okay? So without the void space, there could be no life. Because without that force, there could be no movement. And then without life, there could be no void space, because without something to exert a force upon, there is no force, right? We know this from physics, that there has to be something relative for that force to be acted upon in order for our force to exist. So, everything in existence moves. Everything in non-existence is the force that creates movement. So, the empty space is what creates movement. Yeah? Okay. So now, when we look at this movement, when we look at this force exerting onto particles or waves, we see that the higher the rate of vibration, the faster something is moving, the more energy it has, right? The more energy is being exerted onto it that's moving it, the more complex it will be. Okay? So I've put a link down below to go watch a video with Greg Braden where he's showing frequency, so sound frequency being pumped through a water droplet. And he's showing that when the sound frequency is low, the geometric pattern that appears in the water droplet is simple, like a cube. It's simple, right? And then he shows that as you increase the frequency, right, as you increase the amount of energy, increase the amount of force, that therefore increases the speed at which the particles and or waves are moving, the more complex the geometric structure becomes. All right? So this is where we talk about frequency. Frequency is simply the word we use to categorize how much of that force is being exerted upon something, creating the speed at which it's moving, right? So something that is moving slowly has less energy, less of that force is being exerted upon it, less energy, slower movement, lower frequency. Something that is moving at a much higher speed obviously has more energy from the void space being forced upon it, right? Creating faster motion, creates more energy, creates the capacity for more complexity, okay? So the more energy something has, the higher its frequency, the higher the degree of complexity and order it can maintain, okay? Because in order for something to be complex, it has to have a higher degree of order, right? So think of it this way, right? If a town of people have 100 people and there's only one rule that everyone has to follow in the town, right? There's only one rule. That's a simple system, right? That's a simple system that's running this community. One rule. It's not going to take that much energy, that much manpower, that much brain power, that much energy in general in order to maintain that one rule. Whereas if the society has 45 different rules, so it's more complex, right? There's 45 different models that govern the community. It's going to require 40 times more energy, more manpower, more thought, more people to enforce these rules, to run that level of complexity. You see what I'm saying here? So with complexity comes a greater degree of energy that is required, okay? So, like I say, if we look at the complexity of a chair versus the complexity of a human being, we can see that the structure and the protons and the waves that make up a human being is far more complex. Our design is far more complex than that of a chair or a table, meaning we require more energy in order to function and live than the chair. Now, at the same time, because we are complex, okay, so see how this correlation happens. Because we are complex, we have the capacity to move at higher frequencies, right? We have the capacity to hold higher amounts of energy than something that is more simple. So it goes both ways, right? The more energy you pump into something, the more complex it becomes. And at the same time, the more complex something is, the more energy it can hold, right? Now, let's consider for a moment that another word that you could use for energy is information, okay? So, like I say, in this society, if the society has one rule, that's a very small amount of information that everyone needs to have in order to keep that structure happening, right? Small amount of information, small amount of energy, small amount of structure, less order, yeah? Simple, not complex, right? When we have 44 rules, right, that requires more energy, more complexity, and it provides the container for more information. 44 rules is way more information than one rule. Yes? Does that make sense? 44 rules is way more information. Way more understanding is required to sustain 44 rules than the understanding that is required to sustain one rule, right? So as our frequency increases, we are essentially saying this thing contains more information, more universal information, more of the information from the universe. So now, what does that mean? In the beginning, it says there was God and the Word. The Word was with God. So if we understand that from the void space is the womb of creation, containing all of the information that is required to create life, right, was all in the void. And from the void came life, right? There was word, so sound, and then there was light. And that is what created physical reality, emotional reality, thought reality. So everything that can be perceived, everything that is in existence, that is moving, was birthed from the void space, okay? Came from the void space, came from nothing. It was first nothing, and then there was life. And so what we understand is, in the void space is all the information of the universe that's being slowly transmitted to us through the force that it is exerting upon the particles and waves that make up creation. Okay? So sit with that for a little bit. I know that that might sound a little woo-woo, but because what we know is literally as we take in more of this information, meaning as our frequency increases, as we take in more of this energy, as more of this force moves our particles and waves faster, things become more complex. They evolve. Do you understand that? They evolve. Evolution is simply something of lower complexity becoming greater and greater and greater in its complexity. So every single time something takes in more of that energy, it becomes more complex because now it has more information about life. Okay? So when we look at something this is kind of where we can talk about love and fear. Okay? So now that you understand that everything in the universe that is in existence moves, it requires movement in order to be counted as life. And that force that is moving everything comes from the void space. So the void is pushing the particles and the waves, creating movement, which creates life, which is actually a transmission of information. So the more energy that is being acted upon a particle or a wave, or a particle or a wave form, the more complex it can be, the more ordered it can be, the more organized it can be and must be, because it has more information about life, right? So if we look at sacred geometry, right, it is these sacred patterns of life, which again are physical manifestations of this information about life. So as a particle or a waveform takes in more information, takes in more energy, allows more of the force to be acted upon its particles or waves, that increases the frequency of these particles or waves, the more understanding it will have about the nature of life. Okay? About the nature of creation. Because that's what is being transmitted from the void space. Is all the information about life came from the void space, because that's where life came from. All the information that was required to create life is in the void space. So the more energy that is coming to you from the void space, the faster your particles are moving, the more information you have, the more you will understand how life works. Okay? So as you increase your frequency, that's what raising your consciousness is. It's literally allowing more of that force to flow through your particles and waves so that you vibrate at a higher frequency and have greater understanding of how things work. So, when we talk about love and fear, the difference between love and fear, when someone is in a state of fear, they are in a state of a lowered frequency. Okay? Their particles and their waves are moving slower than someone in a state of love. Love and fear are simply two, again, frequency categorizations that we can use. Okay? So the vibration of love is much faster than the vibration of fear. Okay? And the reason that this is because fear is a state of resistance. Okay? So, if we understand that there's only one energy, there's no such thing as good and bad energy. There's only one energy. There's one form of energy that's coming from the void space into life, animating life, right? Only one source of information. One source of information coming from outside. And I know I'm doing this, but inside too, right? You are the void space. So coming from within, coming from without, however you want to view it, both and, there's only one source of information. So when we are resisting taking in that information, when we are resisting life force energy, when we are resisting the energy from within, without, when we are in a state of, no, this shouldn't be happening, I don't like this, I want something to happen that isn't happening, or I want something that is happening not to be happening, we are in a state of resistance, we are in a state of fear, which literally blocks our ability to take in information. And therefore, our consciousness actually becomes less structured, less complex, and more chaotic. So then, this is what we say when it's like, it doesn't matter how much it makes sense to you to do what you're going to do. If you're in a state of fear, it's always going to create chaos. Okay? So it's going to be simple, it's not going to be complex, and it's always going to create more chaos rather than order. Because again, in order to create more order, you need more information. So if you have only enough energy to support a cube, and you want to make something more ordered, right? So you're feeling like this cube situation that you're in is more chaotic. You don't want to be in the cube, it's too simple, right? You want a dodecahedron. You need more sticks. You need more information, more energy. You can't just rearrange the cube as many times as you want and think that you're going to have something different, right? So fear is a state of resistance to this energy, therefore creating less order and less structure than being in a state of love, where you are taking in more information, more understanding, more wisdom, higher complexity, and therefore can create something with higher order, right? So fear descends us into chaos. Love brings us into order. Okay, so have a think about that, and in the next video we're going to tie this all together of how this works with conscious co-creation, how this works with manifestation, how this matters to you. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, blah, 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 all that stuff down below. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Understand the universe, and we will see you in the next video, okay? Mwah!